Hi, this is Stephanie and this is lesson 18. So this is a grammar-based lesson and our topic here is the passive to. So if you remember lesson 16, we looked at passive 1. This is continuing with that lesson. So my name is Stephanie, this is level B2 and lesson 18. So in lesson 16, we looked at the passive tense. We compared an active and a passive sentence. We thought about why we need to use the passive tense, and we looked at how you form the present simple passive and the past simple passive. So this lesson is going to build upon that. So in lesson 18, you will use present continuous passive, use past continuous passive, use present perfect passive, and use past perfect passive. So I know it seems like a lot of tenses, but don't worry, we're going to look at each one individually. And for each tense, I will give you an example using a positive, negative, and question form. Then you will have the opportunity to practice. And once we've looked at each of these 4 tenses individually, then we will put them together and you will have the opportunity to practice and choose which tense you think is appropriate for the sentence. Okay, so let's begin with looking at the form. And we're going to start with present continuous passive. Okay, so present continuous passive is formed using present simple of the verb be plus being plus past participle. So in our example, the positive sentence, the room is being cleaned now. Negative, the room isn't being cleaned now. And question, is the room being cleaned now? Okay, so now is a good time to pause the slide and make a note of how you form present continuous passive. Good. Okay, and now we're going to practice. So I'm going to give you the verb and 3 sentences that I want you to make using present continuous passive. Okay, so the verb is paint. I'd like you to make a positive, the room now, a negative, the room now, and a question, the room now, using present continuous passive and the verb paint. So pause the slide and write down 3 sentences. Good. So hopefully, let's check our answers together, and hopefully these are the 3 sentences you have. So positive. The room is being painted now. Negative. The room isn't being painted now. And question. Is the room being painted now? So well done if you got that correct. Remember, if you want to say the agent, if you want to say who is doing the action, you just need to use by. So the room is being painted now by my friend. The room is being painted now by a decorator. So to add in the agent, the who, just use by. Good. Okay, so let's move on then to the past continuous passive. Okay, so to form the past continuous passive, you need the past simple of the verb be plus being plus past participle. So our example, the same context, a positive sentence, the room was being cleaned. Negative, the room wasn't being cleaned. Question, was the room being cleaned? So again, please pause the slide and make a note of how you form the past continuous passive. Good. Okay, and now it's your turn to practice. Again, I will give you the verb to use, so you just need to make 3 sentences. Okay, so using the verb take and the past continuous passive, can you make 3 sentences? So positive, the test at 12 yesterday. Negative, the test at 12 yesterday. And question, the test at 12 yesterday. Pause the slide and write down your 3 answers. Good. So hopefully you have got the same answers as me. Let's find out. Okay, so positive. The test was being taken at 12 yesterday. Negative. The test wasn't being taken at 12 yesterday. And question. Was the test being taken at 12 yesterday? So well done if you correctly got those 3 sentences. Okay, our third tense today is present perfect passive. So this time you need the present simple of the verb have plus been this time plus the past participle. So our example, the same context, a positive sentence, the room has been cleaned. Negative, the room hasn't been cleaned. Question, has the room been cleaned? So again, please pause the slide and make a note of how to form the present perfect passive. Okay, good. So again, I'm going to give you the opportunity to practice. Okay, so this time our context is arrest. So the verb is arrest, as you can see by the photograph. Using present perfect passive, can you make 3 sentences? Positive, a man. Negative, a man. And question, a man. Pause the slide and write down 3 answers. Good. Okay, so if you had your notes to refer to, you should have got these correct. Let's check together. So your positive sentence should read, a man has been arrested. Negative, a man hasn't been arrested. And question, has a man been arrested? So again, well done if you got those correct. Okay, and the last tense that we are going to look at today is the past perfect passive. So this time you need past simple of the verb have plus been plus the past participle. Again, our example is the room and clean. A positive sentence is the room had been cleaned. Negative, the room hadn't been cleaned. And question, had the room been cleaned? So again, please pause the slide and make a note of how you form the past perfect passive. Okay, so our final practice here, I'm going to give you the 3 sentences and the verb that you need to use. Okay, so using past perfect passive and the verb write, can you make 3 sentences? Positive, the report before the deadline. Negative, the report before the deadline? And question, the report before the deadline? So pause the slide and see if you can make 3 sentences for me using past perfect passive. Okay, how did you find that? Are you ready to check your answers? Let's see the last one. Okay, so your positive sentence, the report had been written before the deadline. Negative, the report hadn't been written before the deadline. And your question, had the report been written before the deadline? Really well done if you got those correct. Well done. Okay, so now that we've had a look at the 4 tenses, I'm going to show you 4 sentences, 1 in each tense, and let's see if you can correctly identify which tense each sentence is. So we'll keep in the same context of the room and clean. But 4 sentences, and you need to tell me which tense is being used, which passive tense. Sentence 1, the room has been cleaned. Sentence 2, the room was being cleaned. Sentence 3, the room had been cleaned. And sentence 4, the room is being cleaned. So again, please pause the slide, have a think which tense is being used. See if you can identify without looking back. If you need to look back, no problem, but have a go and see if you can identify the tenses for these 4 sentences. Okay, how did you find that? Was that quite easy? Shall we check our answers together? Okay, so hopefully you have identified that sentence 1, the room has been cleaned, is present perfect passive. The room was being cleaned is past continuous passive. Sentence 3, the room had been cleaned is past perfect passive. And sentence 4, the room is being cleaned is present continuous passive. Really well done if you correctly identified the 4 tenses there. Okay, so before we move on, just a point to note, the pronunciation of been and being. If you have a look at number 1, the room has been cleaned. But sentence 2, the room was being cleaned. So try to make sure when you're pronouncing this, being, you have the 2 syllables. Been is 1 syllable, being is 2 syllables. Good. Okay, so we've looked at the 4 passive tenses today. What we're going to do now is to practice using these in context. So we're going to have a look at some sentences, and what I want you to do is to use the verb that I've given you and choose the correct passive tense. So let's have a look at the sentences together. Number 1, the candidate as we speak. Use the verb interview. Number 2, the decision yet. Use the verb make. Number 3, planes due to fog last week. Use the verb divert. Number 4, the problem when the teacher arrived. Use the verb solve. Number 5, the changes already. Use the verb implement. Number 6, the data at the moment. Use the verb collate. Number 7, traffic by police yesterday. Use the verb redirect. And finally, the room before I arrived. Use the verb paint. So when you're deciding which tense to use, remember, look very carefully at the sentence. There might be some clues in the sentence. So, for example, if you have a look at number 3, planes due to fog last week. Last week is a big clue as to which tense you need to use. So read very carefully, see if you can correctly identify the tense, and then form the passive sentence using the verb that I have given you. So please pause the slide now and have a go at this exercise. Okay, how did you find that? Well, let's have a look at the answers together and then you can compare with your own ideas. Okay, number 1. The candidate is being interviewed as we speak. So the clue here was as we speak, something that's happening now. It must be a continuous tense. Number 2, the decision hasn't been made yet. So here we're using yet, which suggests that we need a present perfect. And remember, we use yet in a negative or a question form. Number 3, planes were being diverted due to fog last week. Number 4, the problem had been solved when the teacher arrived. Number 5, the changes have been implemented already. Again, already is a key indicator of present perfect. Number 6, the data is being collated at the moment. Number 7, traffic was being redirected by police yesterday. And number 8, the room had been painted before I arrived. Really well done if you correctly managed to get all 8 of those correct. If you didn't, it's a good idea to go back and review the tense of the ones that you made the mistake with, and then you can try again. Remember that at the end of this video, there's also a test. So that's an extra opportunity for you to practice these different passive forms. And there will also be extra practice in lesson 20, which will be another review opportunity for you. So lots of opportunity to practice these different passive tenses. Our next lesson together, lesson 19, is going to be a vocabulary lesson and on the topic of the weather. So British people love talking about the weather. We're going to have a look at describing different types of weather conditions, and we will talk a little about extreme weather. So a very interesting lesson in lesson 19. But thank you very much for joining me in lesson 18, and I will see you next time.